I guess I'll just like an introduction for everyone here. Okay, so I'm Ponera. We got Doncroft,
Hello.
Zappy, and
Uh,
Brutaxilos.
I'm Zappy.
And River's listening in, like the slave she is, I guess, to do the audio video stuff later. So we're going to talk about the Xenomorphs from Alien today. I think a really cool place to start off the conversation is to try to get a grasp on genetically how these things are doing what they're doing. I would suggest that they're probably using some sort of DNA, given that they can interact with their hosts, because I guess it was Alien 3 that we saw the dog alien. And that explains, this is one reason why I love them so much, is that I actually can forgive them being anthropomorphic for this is like the one alien that I will forgive, because actually...
Ponera, could you explain to the listening audience what anthropomorphic means?
Okay, well, it basically means that you've got a human-like body form. So, 2 legs, 2 arms, a head with eyes, mouth, nose, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're very humanoid-like. And the reason for this is because they actually are the only aliens that do a good job of explaining this. They basically utilize the DNA of whatever their host is. And since we are human-like, obviously, if they utilize our DNA, then they're going to turn out human-like as well. And I guess that's part of the explanation for why the ones that utilize the human DNA are smarter and a little bit more slender than some of the other ones that are potentially out there.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that they go about this is obviously the queen lays an egg, which I think only has one set of genes, or one set of chromosomes. So I think what's going on is something similar to what you see in the ants, of course, because I love my ants. Basically, the egg goes through meiosis, which is where the chromosomes split. And so the egg itself only has one set of chromosomes, obtaining the other set of chromosomes from whatever the host is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, the theory of they've often been the host is often referred to as a parent, like the mother, the queen. It's backwards. The queen releases the face hugger from the egg, which is like a sperm, but it's a whole other organism, and then the host is like the egg that gets basically fertilized, but that's not the case. I mean, it's inserting an embryo into them, through their esophagus. But this theory was developed before it was confirmed by the later films, by the first film, the movie Alien, by oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the director. Was it Ridley? Ridley, yeah. And in the credits, the person who played the original alien was referred to as Kane's son, and Kane was the person who first became attached to that face hugger. So It said Kane's son right there. So they're implying right there the sort of parentage mockery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's sort of a novel approach to obtaining extra genes, I suppose. Given that, if we continue on with the ant comparison, ants actually are pretty susceptible to genetic flaw because of the haplodiploid system. So if they get like a weak male, then they're in a little bit of trouble, and they're susceptible to inbreeding as well. So the aliens themselves would probably be pretty susceptible to whatever their chromosomes that they inherit is going to either adversely or positively affect what the creature ultimately is able to tolerate or become, I think. I would assume that all of the aliens themselves are probably inherently female. Do we have any sort of evidence that would suggest otherwise?
The standard alien is referred to as a drone in the literature, and drone is used as a term for a male insect, isn't it, in colonies?
Yep.
No, the drones themselves are typically like in the hymenopterans, which are the bees, ants, and wasps. Drones are pretty much all female, and then the males themselves are pretty few and far between. So
Wait, are you sure?
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure drones are male.
Yeah, there's a queen, and there's the workers, then there's the drones. The drones are male.
Yeah.
Okay. That might be a terminology thing, though, that I'm not sure I would consider that to be strong evidence for the assigning gender to the xenomorphs.
And
how would you get male out of... I mean, presumably the female, if they work the same way as life as we know it, the females would have 2 X chromosomes.
This stuff doesn't have to necessarily be like that, because, some different animals don't use the XX system, and that's
true.
really, arrogant to assume that they would be.
Well, we're going to just use uniformitarianism here and try to hammer this out using life as we know it, right? So just play with me through this example here, and we'll see what we can figure from this. If the females are possessing the same, 2 copies of the same chromosome, doesn't have to be XX or YY or whatever, just two copies of the same chromosome, and are passing on 1 copy to the other parent, would it not depend on what chromosome that they take or adapt from the host?
Well, no, you go ahead.
Okay. I don't completely agree with the host being one of the parents exactly, because there's still chromosome errors possible, because hybrids and stuff, they don't always the parents don't always have the same amount of chromosomes, and they aren't compatible usually. And I don't I feel like all the aliens are actually, they look a lot more like their alien species rather than the parents. The parents just put in a very little amount. I'm thinking maybe the facehugger might actually just use something like a virus kind of thing. It might steal some DNA, but it's not actually.
I actually know the answer to that. The official answer. The official answer is that the embryo is inserted into the stomach through the esophagus by the facehugger. The facehugger is just a delivery organism.
Yeah.
Once it's been inserted, the embryo will carefully crawl its way out of the stomach and into the chest cavity, where it will, by the tissues around it, absorb the DNA of its host right through its skin as it grows, as it takes in nutrients.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, that's fine.
All right, well, I was just going to say that the reason that we could look at all the aliens and think, wow, they look very, very similar to the other aliens, might simply because we don't have a lot of experience with aliens infecting other organisms. There was that one dog alien, and that's about it. Everything else was infecting a human. Had we seen it infect something different, we might have a better standard of comparison.
Now, a lot of people consider the first Alien vs. Predator to be canon, not the second one. The second one's heresy, literary. But the first one, you do see a predator, actually, be used as a host. And the chest burster that comes out is markedly different from one that comes out from a human. The structure of the head, very similar to a predator. Now, if you imagine a human head with all the hair shaved off, it's smooth, right? We've got a smooth forehead that slopes back, and our head is generally longer from forehead to the back of the head than it is from side to side or temple to temple. The aliens that we're familiar with, the Xenomorphs that all come from humans, have that same kind of smooth forehead that goes back. They also have the teeth and the lips. The way they lift their lips up is very human. Their hands are very human-like. So anthropomorphic, as you said, Ponera, I believe?
Yep.
Yeah, so we have not seen them infest many other species. In fact, only the dog and the predator. And sadly, Alien 3 is considered to be the worst out of the 4 movies in the Alien series. Well,
Prometheus, doesn't the original, from Prometheus, the original alien that is formed looks markedly different as well.
I would actually kind of argue that might not actually be the same species as the Xenomorph. They might be they're actually described as being a predecessor. So they might not have been as developed. Because you can see that those are actually organic looking too, whereas all the other Xenomorphs are biomech.
Biomech?
Yeah, but they're mechanical. There's metal integrated in them.
That doesn't make them mechanical. It just means that they're utilizing metal. Instead of, say, enamel, they might be using some sort of metalloid for their teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, so I wouldn't call them mech per se.
Yeah, they're
but
definitely
they
not mechanical.
Yeah, they definitely do use some sort of metal or other material. It could be, I don't even know what their cuticle would be.
It's got to be iron-based. Because, that's where they'd get the metal from the human body.
We've got lots of other metals though too. We've got selenium. We've got. Oh gosh, there's a ton. There's a lot of iron.
Anything that would make a metallic hue, like we see on their teeth and such.
Well, are any of those metals in great enough quantities that we would see in the alien?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Considering
right?
they nest right by the largest blood, right by the aorta, which is the largest source of blood in the body, right there.
Yeah, I would think that iron would be right. It's just iron itself isn't exactly a very, very good choice if you're going to be using metals.
I imagine, but these aliens they're doing amazing things. I mean, the fact that they can grow to the size of a kitten inside the chest of the host undetected is unbelievable. I mean, that's...
Well, there's probably some really strong local anesthetics involved, which is kind of counter to the idea of when they erupt from the chest, the person feels it, right?
I'd imagine it wears off eventually.
Yeah,
well,
they probably
it's kind of hard to, even if you have an anesthetic thing bursting up, breaking the bones and everything on the way out is, you'll feel it.
You probably will. Unless you're on like oxycodone or whatever. Apparently that stuff messes you up. It's probably just a local anesthetic that at one point they just stop investing in because it doesn't matter anymore.
Plus, I can reference. Remember, the whole thing from facehugger to chestburster is a mockery of human reproduction. Instead of male organ to the female or sex organ, it's the proboscis of the facehugger into the esophagus of the host, and labor. They go into labor when the chestburster comes out. But instead of coming out through a natural delivery system, which is painful as is for our lady friends when they're giving birth, it's destructive and it's forced and it's excruciatingly painful. So it's just a mockery.
I kind of want to bring up one point that I had been pondering. Basically, in Alien 4, I believe it is, they make reference to the idea that... Well, I guess this was also in... It was maybe a continuation from 3 or 2. I can't remember specifically. But anyway, there's the reference to the fact that there's a different embryo when a queen is involved.
Yes.
And so how would that be determined? Would that be pure genetics? I mean, because obviously the drones are not giving specific nutrients and hormone stuff to the embryo. The embryo's on its own inside the human.
There is contradiction in the alien universe over this. The video games imply that a drone can turn into a queen when the need arises. Change
that would be
gender.
very similar to ants, then, wouldn't it? We get another ant reference in here.
Well, some species can do that, yeah.
But James Cameron's aliens and most of the movies seem to imply, well, no, they say straight out that there's such thing as a queen embryo. Now, as we know, in the first movie, there's a crashed alien ship with a giant skeleton in it, presumably the captain or whatever of that ship. We don't know what happened to him. It looks like his chest was forced open. And there's a bunch of eggs. There's no queen. It's just eggs that have been dormant for who knows how long. Yep. But clearly, the one that infested Kane was a drone. It was not a queen. In the second movie, Aliens, James Cameron says there was no queen also. It's the same group of eggs, and yet clearly, very early on, a queen was hatched because she had been laying eggs for quite some time and been growing the colony. And the first person to be infested, or what should I say, impregnated, was Newt's father. And they went out there to check that site. So we have to wonder, was the first facehugger, was that the queen? Or did it somehow know? I mean, we don't really know. There's a lot of unanswered questions about that.
There seems to be some sort of extrasensory communication that happens. Some sort of, I guess in the, Alien versus Predator, where the queen calls in all the aliens and gets them to attack her, so that the acid of her blood, or hemolymph or whatever we're calling it, basically melts off the metal and she can go free, right? Mm-hmm. So presumably, if a drone is developing and there's not maybe an inhibitor signal from a queen, perhaps all embryos are by default have the potential to become a queen, and unless inhibited or... Yeah, I guess it would have to be an inhibitor. Unless they're inhibited, they will all become queens.
Is there a reason then that all the colonies would prefer to have one queen instead of having 3 or 4 to produce more eggs and get more aliens out there?
You know what? It's the same thing with ants. I think it's a genetic control mechanism.
It could be like the worker drones are more suited for doing work rather than just laying eggs. Because queens are pretty useless on their own in ants, except for laying eggs, right?
Yeah, and they're pretty useless in the alien universe as well, unless they go sort of beast mode and tear apart their genetic abilities to reproduce, I guess.
Interesting. There's clearly a connection between the alien queen and termites in terms of the egg sac. Mm-hmm. Remember how the queen can detach from the egg sac to move around freely? Well, I mean, I don't think a termite queen can detach from its egg sac, can it?
No, that would be... Well, she basically, in this... the queen in Alien vs. Predator actually removed her abdomen, so that isn't necessarily an egg sac. It's more like a biological factory producing these eggs.
The same thing happened in Aliens by James Cameron. When the building was on fire, the reactor's going, she rips herself free and pursues Ripley and Newt. So.
And presumably that structure is sedentary, so it's cemented to whatever structure is there. And they get this sort of almost creep-like stuff that goes all over the place in their nesting area. Perhaps that is sort of hardwired to that structure on the queen. I don't know. They don't really do a very good job of showing how that's interconnected. But, yeah, certainly she does rip off her abdomen rather than...
So it seems most similar to a termite in that a termite queen has a absolutely massive abdomen.
Lots of other queens do as well.
They do? Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, if they're producing species like leafcutters, the queen in her lifetime will produce millions upon millions of eggs. So in order to do that, she have a pretty big bum.
Now,
are you guys also going to think about the Prometheus stuff?
Prometheus is kind of a strange addition to the series, I think, because the aliens that are there, the big, bald men, I don't really know how to feel about them and how they relate to humans.
I mean, the whole system of how the new Xenomorph comes is pretty unique, I guess, compared to the other movies.
How does that happen again? I've only seen that movie once.
It was the black goo infects one of the guys, and he impregnates a woman, and she...
Well, doesn't, Sorry, go ahead.
The giant facehugger thing that impregnates the engineer.
Right, well, if I remember correctly, I saw this movie a couple weeks ago, the black goo spills out of the pots, and you've got these kind of little snake-like things slithering around, which reminded me kind of like the core of a facehugger, where they've got their proboscis extending down someone's throat to impregnate them, except in this case it's just the proboscis, and that itself actually crawls down the guy's throat and kind of implants itself inside of him.
And now, does that creature itself become the new form, or does it just lay an embryo?
I'm not entirely sure. I do know that the creature does jump out of its throat at one point. And it appears to be still pretty similar. Yeah, he dies. He has an alien jump out of his throat. It's not fun.
Okay, so there's clearly some strong development going on. As far as how the aliens start and where they end up by the time we're at Alien vs. Predator. It seems to me that they were created as some sort of biological warfare.
Yeah.
And that kind of... They were almost over-designed without any fail-safes, and that kind of got out of control really quickly. Is that correct?
I'm I'm not too big on the biological warfare type thing. I mean, if you're familiar with the Flood from Halo, that's more what seems to me like a biological warfare type thing. The Xenomorphs aren't like they don't what they're supposed to be the ultimate survivors. That's I mean, even by killing one, I mean they've got like the acid for blood. That's crazy. So in other words, even by killing one, whatever kills them pretty much dooms itself, unless it's using a ranged weaponry. So and they have like a hive structure. They seem to just be like the epiphany of survival and adaptation. They feed off of whatever hosts are available. And they can lay dormant for a long period of time. So no matter what happens, they survive. They
can even survive in space-like conditions, which is something we see common with water bears today.
Yeah.
Wow.
They can insist, and they can survive vacuum and close to absolute zero, I believe.
So the reason I don't think they're a warfare type is because their hives, they seem to have no desire to migrate. Whenever they're moved, it's always by some other species.
You see, I would agree with that. Like, if it was just the Alien series, but I think Prometheus, like, it just ruins contradicts the whole thing, and it might not be a good thing by the part of the staff and stuff, like people making the movies. But I think in Prometheus they make it pretty clear that the engineers are trying to use them as weapons.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Prometheus, so I can't really.
It's a ship that has the stuff on it, and the ship that crashes that you see later in Alien 1.
It's not the same. It's not actually the same.
It's not the same one?
Yeah,
it's very similar in design, at the very least.
Yeah, it is. It's the same kind of ship, but it's a different planet.
Oh, okay. So it seems that they were these bio-warfare ships were dispatched in order to... And here's the thing, though. The aliens themselves have always been in very restrictive environments. Whether that's a brand new hive starting up somewhere, or an alien just on a ship or in a prison or whatever. So basically we don't actually get to see what happens when you have a mature hive and that hive starts thinking about making new queens. Well, you don't really see what happens.
I think this is one reason why the humans make such suitable hosts for the aliens, is because our structures, like at least in this science fiction universe, our structures are a lot like hives. They've got all these different chambers and passages. They are essentially underground because they're sheltered, and the aliens seem to adapt very well to that kind of surrounding, where they can climb through ducts and stuff. It's not like an open field or anything. It's all indoors and lots of twists and turns and passages where they can use their many biological abilities to their fullest extent.
Huh.
That may have been part of the original control system. If it was indeed a biological weapon, we could have thought, okay, well, I want to deploy these aliens against this ship, and so I'm going to impregnate one of the crewers on the ship. They'll overrun the ship, and then if the ship crashes somewhere or something, they'll just kind of lay dormant until somebody finds them.
Well, that wouldn't work very well against an informed enemy, because the informed enemy would simply eject they would simply euthanize the crew member, because if there was no way to save him, and eject his body.
I think that might be why in Prometheus they were planning, I believe, of sending the ship to Earth, because people in the series have repeatedly abused the aliens trying to make a weapon out of them.
They have. The humans are very interested in,
So that's...
And aliens, the first thing the one guy thinks is just, hey, I bet we could make a weapon out of this. So that does make sense.
Oh, even in the original Alien, the android, I can't remember his name. No, not Bishop. The Hyperdyne 120A2.
Starts with A. The android names are all ABCD.
Okay, you guys. I'm going to look that up because it's going to drive me nuts.
Yeah, you're like the lore nerd,
yep.
The literature nerd here. So, well, it seems clear to me that the aliens themselves are a superorganism. That is a series of organisms that are working together so intimately, similar to things like ants. Except here's the thing, and this actually relates back to my username Ponera. They don't seem to have a whole elaborate caste system. So, like, they don't have it doesn't seem that they have the ability to make major workers, minor workers, or whatever. They just kind of use whatever species is around. Whereas things like the genus Atta, which is the leafcutters, will make tons of different subcastes that look different and perform different functions and have very specific roles, even as far as like older ants versus younger ants and things like this. With things like the genus Ponera, which is actually a very primitive genus found in Australia. Basically, this is true for all sort of primitive ants and wasps and things. They don't have a lot of different caste systems.
Well,
so they have sort of multi-purpose workers.
I just found out his name is Ash. It's hilarious that I remembered his model number but not his name.
That sounds about right for you, actually.
Regarding the caste system, if you look at ants, they have a clear reason for having a class system, and that's because they have to actually work together. Because, like, to get food and stuff, it's really difficult for individual ants to actually kill, like a larger insect species or some other kind of prey. But for aliens, it's kind of clear, like, they can clearly sustain for themselves. If you look at the first movie, I'm assuming that the alien still consumes part of the ships to get some of the iron, because I don't think there's that much iron in a human body, or whatever.
It does look markedly different as a chest burster than it does as a mature drone, and it grows rapidly.
Yes.
And here's the thing: they could also be using their acidic. They've got really acidic body chemistry, so they could be dissolving metals and just simply consuming them.
Yeah.
We don't know.
In other words, it can probably ingest a variety of things.
So if they can handle off by themselves, there's not really any need to have an elaborate caste system to work together with others.
The simple thing is, though, they are a superorganism. They are a group of organisms working closely together to build hives. It's just a matter of necessity, I think. They don't need to have... Their workers are so functional in a multitude of roles that they don't need the specialization.
Could you explain, like, how they work in superorganisms? Because I haven't seen the other Alien movies.
Well, in Aliens 2, which is like Alien 1, there's just one alien.
Yeah.
Alien 3, there's just one alien. Anyway, so Aliens is a really good example. Basically, they don't really show them constructing the hive. What you get is like this really big hive structure where the aliens are capturing people, bringing them to this sort of nesting area, attaching them to the wall. Then the eggs open up, the facehuggers come out, and then they continue to keep these targets alive till the chestbursters come. So they're clearly working together to consolidate all of their victims, rather than going off and just doing things randomly. And also they do coordinated strikes. So in Aliens, they sort of test the autoguns and from multiple angles and try to get in that way, and then they problem solve together to go in through the roof, and that's where they all go. So they very clearly are using things like group tactics and group nesting behaviors. I hope that clears that up. So it is very clear that it's just the only difference between them and something like a leafcutter ant is that they don't have the need for a ridiculous amount and variance of caste.
And that amazing ability contrasts with the fact that they don't actually possess real, true intelligence. While they adapt like that amazingly, the fact that when they pulled back with those guns had only a few rounds left, that they didn't know that. See, it's all instinctual rather than actual intelligence. You never see them pick up a gun and use it, even though it might benefit them. Stuff like that.
So it's kind of like how one ant is completely dumb, but using pheromone trails and recruitment behaviors and things like that, they can actually do very sophisticated behaviors. Mm-hmm. One other thing is we've never seen a fully mature hive. The closest we might have seen is that one 5-second clip in Alien vs. Predator where the Predators are at the top of one of the Mayan pyramids and there's thousands of aliens swarming all over it. And they're all identical. When you have a new hive forming within ants or bees or anything, especially ants, because ants do the whole different caste system a lot more, the queen will only there will only be one, maybe two castes to start off a new, excluding the queen, to start off a new hive. It's not until later on, when there's tens or hundreds of thousands of individuals, that you start to see these castes really come in strongly in different proportions. So it could be that maybe the aliens can do it. We just haven't seen them do it.
Well, on the note of us never having seen a mature hive or having seen a hive outside of some restricted human-created environment, Doncroft, you noted earlier that the aliens might be eating some of the ship or something to get the metal that they need to grow to such enormous sizes so quickly. If we saw them in a different environment, like on an open plane or something, would we see a very different-looking alien? Would they just naturally ingest what they have around them to grow faster?
See, I don't think you'd find them on an open plane. I think they naturally gravitate towards sheltered environments, like underground.
I think that's right. I think that's right, yeah.
I think that's their natural habitat because they're very good climbers. They can see in the dark, and the fact that they are always black, I mean, that implies that they wish to camouflage themselves in darkness.
You might see, like, let's say you've got like a cave system, and they've inhabited the cave system, and at the point where they're getting, they still need to keep reproducing drones and expand and things like that, you might see them sending scouting parties or raiding parties. They kind of do that in, I believe it's Alien 4. I believe it, at one point anyway, they kind of show them sort of expanding outward. They don't necessarily expand their nesting sites or anything outward, but they certainly do sort of send aliens out to get those resources, which are the people.
I propose we talk... Oh, well, go ahead first.
All right, regarding you saying that they're not actually runners, looking at the anatomy, it seems pretty apparent that they don't really run that fast, too. So I would support your theory for that.
They can outrun and outswim a person, though.
Yeah, well, they're larger, but it doesn't look like they're really good, like, long distance or... just runners on the field in general.
Well, considering the rate they were ascending that Mayan pyramid, we that's the only shot we ever saw them traversing long distances, and they were covering that distance quite rapidly. So, I wanted to propose that we talk about one of the most unique parts of the whole alien species, and that's the face hugger. Because to my knowledge, there isn't any species that we know about that has an actual creature, as part of their life cycle, like a creature that, the face hugger is an alien itself, but it's not.
It's a different caste of alien.
It's very different.
Without the influence of genetics from another species, that's technically what the alien is.
But
so without any input from another species, I don't know if they can develop past the face hugger stage.
I don't think they'd ever hatch, which is crazy to think about. But the facehugger, every facehugger has every egg contains a facehugger, which contains an embryo, and the egg really doesn't really represent a development cell so much as it protects the facehugger until the time comes for it to make its move. Because whenever we see, go ahead.
Not for animals. I can't think of any for animals, but I know for plants, like alternation of generations. They actually have stuff like that where, like, I think ferns or something, they have a diploid life cycle and a haploid life cycle, and they actually look different, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they actually do that. Yeah, I can't remember specifically. It's been years since botany, and botany is lame, so another one of my biases. But yeah, he raises a good point there. That they can do that.
And if it was haploid and diploid cycle, it would actually support the original thing we said that the DNA, the chromosomes, is mixed with the host, because then that can imply that the facehugger is haploid, and it can merge with the host's chromosomes.
I think that's right on, and I think they do have a haplodiploid life cycle, similar to what you see with ants. Of course, again, and it makes sense because they are a superorganism, and in the haplodiploid system, the drones will actually be more related to each other than they would be to any daughters they could potentially have. So let me just read specifically what it says here. The relationship between worker bees, which are all diploid females, in a hive or nest is 0.75 rather than 0.5. So this means that workers are significantly more closely related to their siblings rather than to any daughters or their mother or whatever. And it's kind of interesting. The queen itself, the queen alien, technically, I don't think can have daughters, but she can have granddaughters. Because her genetics sort of skip a generation. She goes right into that facehugger stage, and then the facehugger itself actually dies, but not until it gives birth to what is effectively another generation. So I think that the queen can't actually have daughters or sons of her own.
That would be supported by what happens in Alien Resurrection, where due to absorbing, being mixed with the DNA from a human female, Ripley, the queen developed that mutation that allowed her to have a womb.
Yes.
Something new. Because that had never been seen in like anywhere else.
Yeah, and unfortunately that led to some rather serious heresy where the queen ate Sigourney, and then that ridiculous-looking derp alien appears that we all try to forget.
Do you have a link to your image? I want to see what it looks like.
Looks kind of like a human skull. It's weird.
It's really bad looking. It's like all slimy and disgusting looking, and
it's kind of like a human skull. With no skin and then no cartilage on the nose, just the bone. It's an interesting looking thing, but
it has no cheek either.
I think something we're glossing over here is with the kind of plant-like life cycle that the aliens have. Are they now more similar to the Protoss? Because the Protoss are photosynthetic, so now we've got two sets of anthropomorphic aliens that are taking from plants. I don't know. It's just hilarious.
I don't think the aliens are photosynthetic.
I'm not saying they're photosynthetic. They're just taking parts of their anatomy from plants, very similarly to the Protoss.
Yeah, they are using a reproductive method similar to plants and ants, rather than something more like what we're familiar with as mammals. Their physiology, once all is said and done and you've got an adult individual, is very much so not plant-like.
Well, I would argue, I mean, they're a class. We would have to create a new classification for them because they don't fit any classification we have on Earth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're at like 40 minutes now. Can't believe it's already been 40 minutes. So I'm going to cut things off here. We can always have another episode. We'll probably have more episodes about the Xenomorphs coming up. I'm not quite sure because I got to cover things like banelings and stuff like that yet.
To everyone who listened through the whole thing, you guys are awesome. You're definitely nerds. I mean, the fact that you listened to this whole thing means you're a massive nerd. So kudos to you, sir.
Yeah. And River's hopefully going to add some flair into this video to make it entertaining for you because River's actually quite hilarious. So, but yeah, good point. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll hopefully have more content coming out soon.
All right.